Concerned legal practitioners say the national lockdown due to the coronavirus may have dire consequences for the legal fraternity. Rehana Khan Parker from RKP Attorneys says although Chief Justice Moegoeng Moegoeng stated that the court would remain open to the public in limited instances, it still has a direct economic impact on the field as many law firms get their source of income from the criminal courts and family law. Rehana joins us now via Skype to discuss this further. Good to have you, Rehana. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for having me.
So one of your things that you stated was that many law firms, especially those who rely on criminal courts and family law, are suffering. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit on this for us.
Thank you so much. It's very important to understand the background to that statement. And that is, we have approximately 27,223 legal practitioners in South Africa, of which 39% of them are females. The important figure that I need to note is the law firms. So the law firms comprises 12,373 law firms. And here comes the shock. Of that figure, 82% of them are single practitioners. So that represents a figure of approximately 10,182. And these are figures as at July 2019 off the website of the Law Society of South Africa. Now, many of those single practitioners, the 82% of them, practice with very limited resources. Many of them are involved in criminal matters and family law type of matters, which makes it, given the pandemic and the lockdown and the regulations which prohibit a legal practitioner from accessing the courts, has a direct effect on the practice of a legal practitioner.
Yeah.
So my concern is specifically for that group. Of course, the pandemic cuts across all forms of legal practice, across all businesses throughout South Africa. Nobody can escape it. But the important point is that our Chief Justice Moegoeng Moegoeng had said, our courts are not shut. It's not shut. And the regulation spells out in which instances one is able to access the courts. And here comes the difficulty. So the difficulty is that one can only access the courts in limited instances, which I fully understand, given the pandemic and to flatten the curve. However, when the regulations were promulgated, the first set of regulations included legal practitioners, and we were then regarded as an essential service. The difficulty that we had was obtaining our permits. In the second round of the regulation, when the regulations were amended, the legal practitioner was then required to obtain a legal permit from the head of the institution, which is my provincial director in the relevant province, and only if the matter is enrolled. Now, that is impractical. The Minister of Justice and Correctional Services invited the Legal Practitioners Council to make submissions on the impact financially and operationally on lawyers. I was one of the respondents. I submitted my submissions to the Legal Practice Council because I find that the regulation is impractical and, importantly, Leanne and the listeners, it's preventing access to justice, which in terms of the Constitution, everyone has a right to have any dispute heard before the courts.
Because that's the reality is at the end of the day, as much as you're talking to the law fraternity not being able to practice, there are also people that are going through, particularly when it comes to family issues. I mean, we were running a story in the news showing how incest is on the rise, rape of spouses and family members is on the rise because of being in close proximity, and also abuse is on the rise. Now, with courts and lawyers and family courts not being able to practice as freely as you say they are, this is also a detriment to the public.
Oh, definitely. It cuts across all spheres of practicing law. For example, evictions was the highlight last week, where I could not, because the permit and the regulation prevented me from going out to a site to interview my prospective clients. I had to apply for a permit. Now, that is cumbersome. The way the regulation stands at the moment is that I can only obtain a permit if I have a matter that is enrolled. My clients are ordinary people. They have limited resources. They certainly do not have data, and they do not have a cell phone.
Yeah.
The way I would normally practice is that they would come into my offices and they would consult. I am not saying in my submissions, and that goes specifically to the Minister of Justice, I'm not saying that. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. If you can wrap it up very quickly, but we can hear you.
I am not saying that it must be a free-for-all and just open the courts and let's be operational. But certainly find a medium where lawyers are able to practice and access the courts on a limited basis. Allow the law firms to issue permits. Allow me as an employer to issue a permit for my employee. Banks operate, courier companies operate, and they still deliver my cards to my door. So if they are operational, why can lawyers not access?
Well, there's a point that you've left us on, and I'm going to have to wrap the interview there, but putting out to many out there how some of these restrictions in place are really, really hurting, as we know, businesses, but also the justice system that is meant to be an essential service. You can hear clearly that, unfortunately, the restraints on lawyers are not making it possible for this to go ahead. Giving us just a small view into that was Rehana Khan Parker from RKP Attorneys, saying that the impact of the lockdown on the law fraternity and individuals who need assistance is dramatic. All right, let's quickly take a break. More after this.